Now, I said I was gonna reveal this guy's identity by the time I got to this mission, so believe it or not, this guy right here is the ultimate version of the Green Goblin. Yeah, Bendis and Bagley decided to give Goblin over here a little bit of a modern update. Not too surprising considering that this was his design back in the original Spider-Man comics. What was the idea that they ended up using? They literally made him into a big Hulk-sized goblin that can summon fire around his body. I'm very mixed on how I feel about this version of Goblin. On the one hand, this is a cool, creative, and kind of scary idea. On the other hand, it's a bit extra and sometimes a little ridiculous. Now that I'm talking about Ultimate Goblin, I just realised that the game doesn't really tell you that this is him. They say Osborn only twice, and when you're chasing him, the text at the bottom of the screen will say Goblin is getting away. And that's all the information you get in this game. The weirdest thing about this is that Spider-Man doesn't even get worried or terrified that Goblin's on the loose again, considering what he's done to his life in the Ultimate Comics before the events of this game or even the Venom arc. Here's a quick summary of what Norman has done to Peter in this continuity so far. He created the spider that gave him his powers. He messed with his own son's mind and gave him goblin abilities that he can't control, putting Peter in a very difficult situation with his best friend. He threw Mary Jane off of a bridge which scarred her for the rest of the series, and he threatened Peter's life because of knowing his identity as the Green Goblin. I'm sure he did a few other things that I missed out, but do you see what I mean? I'm sorry, but it just feels out of character for Spider-Man not to have any sort of resentment for Goblin here. Man, I've talked about this for a while. This is the second hardest chase in the game. Guess what the first one is? But unlike that chase, this one has the right balance of being exciting and challenging. Goblin can do a smaller version of Venom's super jump, so he's a lot faster than you'd assume. You absolutely have to stay close enough and not swing into any buildings, because if you stop or slow down for a couple of seconds, he'll escape. At points he'll stop and throw a few fireballs at you. They're easy to dodge. Just be ready to start swinging again as soon as he jumps away. After a few minutes, you save some civilians and follow Goblin into the first arena for the boss battle. When Goblin's completely covered in fire, you can't cause any damage, so you need to avoid his fireballs and the occasional jump attack until he throws these two fireballs at the same time. As soon as he throws them, he burns himself out and the fire covering him completely evaporates, giving you an opportunity to attack him. You'll have about 7 seconds until the fire comes back. Repeat this until the next cutscene plays. The second half of the fight is a little bit different. He'll start off by throwing a few fireballs, then suddenly he's jumping and trying to ground slam you. All you need to do here is jump as soon as he jumps until he's at the very top of the room. Then right before he lands, do a double jump to avoid the fire that briefly surrounds him. Then you can go and beat the ever-loving crap out of him until S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives. This is a pretty good, if kind of forced in mission. I know it's a part of the Beetle storyline, but part of me thinks Goblin was added in here just for another boss battle to lengthen the already short story, which I guess would explain why Spider-Man wasn't really bothered about him. But aside from how I feel about his inclusion, this mission with the Goblin is one of the best ones. Back to Venom, we see him hopping across rooftops, the usual. Then suddenly the Beetle shows up and says he requires a sample of the suit. He leads Venom to this abandoned warehouse for the boss battle. It starts off similar to the first one. He'll throw a handful of grenades, shoot at you, and do that move again. There is one new move he'll do in the start of the fight.
He'll use these energy swords and fly around the place until he comes directly towards you, which is your opportunity to use your tentacles before he can start slicing you up. Halfway through the fight, he'll activate his trap, which is this big energy cage with little square traps around that you don't want to fall into. The rest of the fight is Beetle hovering over one of the little traps and doing this. Just whip him with your tentacles and keep repeating that. This is definitely the harder fight with him. Beetle is defeated and I can't tell if Venom killed him or not. Oh well, we got this really cool shot.
Now it's time to answer all of the questions that this storyline created. The answer to all of the questions is I don't know or never explained.
Why did Beetle help Osborn escape and then keep him hidden at the Latverian embassy? Never explained. Why did Beetle steal a sample of the Sandman? I don't know. Why did he need a sample of the Venom suit? Never explained. Who is he working for? Okay, this one is hinted at in the game, but to anyone who doesn't read Marvel Comics, you aren't gonna have a clue who it is. It's Doctor Doom, because, Latveria is his country, so he's probably scheming up something that we'll never find out. This is the biggest problem I have about the game, is just all of the questions this storyline leaves unanswered. Now we are on the longest and final mission of the game. Peter gets captured by Sable and proceeds to jump out of the car. This second fight with her isn't very good. If you try to punch or kick, she'll block every hit and do a counter attack that most of the time is unavoidable. So the only way to do damage is to use your air to ground kick. She'll sometimes block those as well, but again, this is the only way to end the fight. Yeah, the first fight with her was better. The fight ends up putting, you guessed it, civilians in danger, so you and Sable have to save them. After that, Venom shows up, knocks Sable out and takes her away. Peter somehow switches into his suit like this and now has to save Sable and stop Venom. This is a very unique chase because of you knowing Venom's playstyle and how far he jumps and zips everywhere. Having the player be able to play as Venom throughout the game and then the final chase is chasing him was a great idea and worked out very well. The chase ends with a third fight with Venom. Like last time, you can't attack him for too long because of Spidey's headache, and you have to protect Sable from his attacks. This and the final fight with Venom are tied as the hardest fights with him. This is because he uses most of his attacks you would use when playing as him. I just like the idea of fighting a character that you played as throughout a game. I don't know, it sounds really cool to me. Sable wakes up, captures both of them and sends them to Trask. Later on, Eddie gets woken up by a loud scream in the next room. Then this other Venom looking guy walks into the room and Eddie senses that it's actually Peter. If you couldn't tell by the design, this is Ultimate Carnage. The Carnage symbiote in the main Marvel universe is the offspring of the Venom symbiote. It bonded with serial killer Cletus Cassidy when both he and Eddie were in the same jail cell. When the Venom symbiote came to break Eddie out, it left its offspring behind. It joined with Cletus and formed Carnage. Now, before this game happened, there was an arc in the comic that created Ultimate Carnage. The short version of it is that Dr. Connors examined some of Peter's blood after he gave him some medical treatment after a fight as Spider-Man. He was amazed and wanted to create something like him. He mixed in Richard Parker's research of the Venom suit with Peter's blood and some of his lizard DNA, and Carnage was born. A monster that went on a rampage, killing a lot of people, including Gwen Stacy, which is also never brought up here. Cassidy only gets a little reference in the comic, but doesn't really exist in this universe. It's a shame because without him, Carnage doesn't really have a lot of personality at all. Back to the game, where things are a bit different. It turns out that ever since the Venom arc, when Peter had the suit on for a few hours, a part of it stayed inside of him, and the part that Eddie wears wants to join back with it. So Adrian stupidly decides to inject him with his own crappy Venom suit, the result of which is he and the others in the room are either killed or knocked out. Carnage has some of Spider-Man's moves, and a couple of his own, including healing without anyone to feed on, whip him with your tentacles and use your grab attacks. Trust me, they'll do a decent amount of damage. There's guards and scientists for you to feed on, but be careful because Carnage can interrupt you and kill everyone else in the room. Lastly, he has this big circle-shaped attack that you have to avoid, basically like the one Beetle used. This is a very fun fight. The sound design and music really sell this as some kind of horror section. What the hell? How have I not even mentioned the art style of this game? It really is the comic brought to life, and the cutscenes are just... no words to describe them, they're that good. Although there were some glitches in them when I replayed it for this review, like some character models instantly disappearing in the previous panels that were on screen, and the audio being out of sync and behind by only a few seconds to like 10 seconds by the end of the game. Some of them were fine, but the rest of the time was what I just said. Venom consumes the Carnage suit and now has total control over the suit. To physically show this, he now has the iconic white spider symbol. Nice touch. With control over the suit, he decides to go kill Trask, but Peter finds him first and demands a few answers. Trask is about to give him a folder that has all of the information that he's been looking for, but Venom arrives right before he can give it to Spider-Man. He tries to escape via a helicopter that he can't fly. I don't know what he was thinking either. The objective for this final boss is to get Venom's attention away from the helicopter and to you instead so you can do what you do best. Venom is very aggressive in this final fight. He'll do his roar for a few seconds before whipping you with his tentacles. Throughout the fight, this fire over here gets closer and closer to the helipad, so the last part of the fight is only on there. Try not to double jump when you're on here because the blades will take away some of your health. When you're on the helipad, use a combo on him for as long as you can, but also watch out in case he sends you into the fire. Venom can eventually kill Trask if he knocks the helicopter back enough for it to fall off. So this final boss is pretty damn good. There are little problems here and there, like the blades giving you a bit too much damage for example, but all in all this is one way to end the game. Peter reads about everything that happened all those years ago. Doctors Parker and Brock were tricked into selling the suit to Trask. Before they could continue their research, they died in a plane crash because Dr. Brock snuck with him the last remaining piece of the suit. He decided to put it on but lost control, causing the crash. S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives to clean everything up and Peter absolutely needs Eddie to see the folder, but while he was reading it, he escaped. You know what? I'm just gonna sit here and let the rest play out.
It's just...
What?
Eddie. I mean, he's out there. And I don't know if I'm scared of him or for him.
But he's not here.
No.
I'm here.
After you've beaten the story, you unlock the option to play as Venom anytime you want by going to the pause menu and selecting that option. And because of the events at the end of the story, he'll have the white spider symbol, but you'll still slowly lose health, so the symbol being there is just for the design. All you can really do as Venom is cause a bunch of damage to the city, which'll start a game of you trying to get your best high score by fighting off waves of enemies until you eventually die. I did recently find out that you can do races as Venom, but with his playstyle, it's a big pain in the arse. They honestly should have gave the player the option to play as both Venom and Spider-Man from the start. Then you could play both of their own missions in whatever order you want, but that's just an idea. The open world is very similar to the last game minus the pizza and balloon missions. The races are still here, but they're a little better because of how the web swinging works here. A new addition to the open world is the combat tours, where you go to groups of enemies and beat them up. Depending on how you feel about the combat and the amount of enemies that are on screen, these will either be really easy or an absolute nightmare for you to get through. I guess it would have helped if there was an actual dodge button. Everything else is pretty much the same. You've got your city crimes, except this time they're these tiny red dots that pop up on the map. So get ready to be looking at that map for a while. And you've got your sets of tokens that are located throughout the city that most of you probably won't attempt. Though at least collecting these gives you quite a decent amount of rewards, like concept art, covers of the comic, character models of characters that never appear in the story, and of course alternate suits like whatever this is, Peter Parker with or without a hoodie, or the black suit which requires completing the game 100%, which I've attempted to no success and just losing to that final Johnny Storm race. At least they have something for completely beating it, and hey, might as well make it the best looking suit in the game. Lastly, there's the voice acting, and this is the game with the best of it so far. That really isn't saying much, though every now and then there's some not so great voice work.
Leave my family alone.
But by far the best voice actor in the game is Arthur, last name as Venom. He gives him this monstrous voice that you won't forget once you hear him speak. That roar is a good example. And again, the cutscenes and art style are just too good to exist in a Spider-Man game. So the fact that we got this 16 years ago makes this game even more special.
Ultimate Spider-Man, to me, is one of the best games in the series, and because I finished reading the comic series only a year ago, replaying this felt even better than before. It has its problems, like some storylines not going anywhere, the combat tours and the combat in general, and some glitches in a couple of cutscenes, but it's outweighed by all of the good stuff that I mentioned. So I'm gonna give Ultimate Spider-Man an 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching, and swing on over here next time as I review Spider-Man 3, the movie game. See you guys.